Okay, I'm going to make the assumption that since there's no one else standing up here, that means it's my job to get the session started again. So, hey everybody, thanks for getting out of lunch and deciding that you're going to sit down and listen to me talk for a few minutes. I'm going to do some introductions and then talk to you a little bit about why this might be a good use of your time. So, the title of the presentation is World-Changing JavaScript from Developing World Healthcare, HospitalRun, and the JS Foundation. I am Joel Worrall. I serve as the Chief Technologist for an agency called Masterworks, and I used to be the CTO and head of marketing for an international nonprofit called Cure International that incubated the project, and I'm part of the HospitalRun core team. You can follow me everywhere on the interwebs at Tango Llama. Okay. First point, I'm just going to take a second to give some props to my employer who gives me the opportunity to do stuff like this. So one of the things that's worth noting is like everybody who works on the project does so totally for free, including me. I got a day job, and that day job is working for this agency. We work for a bunch of nonprofit organizations across the world. We're in the midst of transforming ourselves into like more of a product-focused company so that we can help the people that are our clients. So happy to be doing that with my time. And I'm glad to get a chance to be here and talk about HospitalRun with you guys. Okay, so quick agenda. I'm going to go through the very first slide, why this might be worth 30 minutes of your life. We're going to do a project overview and talk a little bit about how and why HospitalRun happened. I'm going to do a section on lessons learned. This is kind of, a lot of this is like a philosophical talk. Like we consider ourselves, HospitalRun as a project, an expression of what the JavaScript community is capable of doing. When we're utilizing the tools that are available to us, like through all the incredible work that all of us do, and also we like to think that we're helping contribute to some of those technical tools as well. But I'm going to talk a little bit about philosophy and like some things that we've learned about running a project like this. And then I always close out with an invitation, just with some ideas of ways that you could think about how you might be able to help the project, or potentially think about starting something of your own. Okay, so why is this worth your time? Well, maybe it's not, but I'll give you at least three reasons why I think it could be. Okay, so first of all, I hope you walk out of this a little bit more informed about the challenges around developing world healthcare IT. That'll make you sound interesting at parties. I hope that you walk away from this a little bit inspired to invest in your own growth while you're working on charitable projects, because I think that's a real key to making projects like this work is having the opportunity to really grow yourself personally. And then just an invitation to be a part of inventing the future, and if you want to talk about the project more, we can go have a beverage later on. Okay, so what is HospitalRun? Okay, so a lot of times when I'm talking to different types of audiences, I'll tell the whole story about how the project got started and then kind of talk about the tech. But in this sort of environment, let's just get down to like what it actually looks like. Okay, so the short answer, this is, if you go to hospitalrun.io, we'll tell you it is free, easy to use software for developing world healthcare. So what does that actually mean? Well, we run the span of all the functionality that you'd expect to be able to run a simple healthcare clinic, patient records, and then also a lot of the business that goes on around like what it takes to actually deliver healthcare, like tracking medication and orders and making sure that when you prescribe something, you've actually got it in stock. And then being able to do things like simple billing and applied discounting, because we have a strong focus on working with charitable facilities. You can track things like adverse events. And then there's also features in the system that help you think about like how to work with it in your particular context, like custom forms. And a bunch of time-saving features that are focused on well, we built a lot of the features because of the core principles around why the project was formed. Okay, this is like a big list. There's longer things that go into all the features, but patient records, we've got a strong focus on outpatient workflow, allergies, diagnosis, appointments, prescriptions, inventory, which is a really big deal, billing and discounting, custom forms, physician note shortcuts, which is one of my favorite features because it saves somebody time instead of retyping in a set of post-operative notes. It's offline enabled and it's internationalized. Right now we've got 9 different languages, although we've got PRs out there right now for 2 others. and it's ready to go for that. Okay, it's built with open source and mostly with JavaScript. So most of the functionality is built in Ember. The actual data store is CouchDB, and we use PouchDB as the local offline data storage. So obviously we use Node for all like the server-side calls, and a lot of it, frankly, is like decoration on top of the data that's getting loaded into CouchDB. We use Elasticsearch for the search functionality. It's available in lots of different forms for how you actually access it. If you do nothing else and you decide that you're not interested in paying attention to me for the next 25 minutes, go to hospitalrun.io/try it, download the Electron app and start toying around with it. So you can download it. There's an Electron distribution. There's a Dockerized version of the system, so you can deploy it on servers, and then we've got a demo server online. And I'll talk a little bit about why we did all three of those things in just a minute. If you're interested in kind of this is the nerdiest slide I have, which is the technical diagram around how we recommend deployment in a low resource context, which essentially is put an appliance server inside your environment, couple it with a cloud instance, use couch replication in order to make sure the data is synced in both places. And then the blue kind of represents like all the places HospitalRun is running. And because it's an offline first app, all the devices that it's running on, we sort of think about like that's really where the app is running. If you care about stuff like popularity contests, then you'll be happy to know that we've got about 3,500 stars on GitHub. We've got over 100 contributors to the project, about 700 people that are in our Slack community, and it's GPL3. Okay, so we were started, a bunch of us, the three of us that started the project, the sort of like co-founding team, all worked for an international nonprofit organization called CURE that runs a network of hospitals around the world that take care of kids with surgically correctable disabilities. So that's where we kind of gained a lot of the like direct insight into some of the challenges that these types of contexts face, and that goes into a little bit of the story I'm going to tell later on. And most recently, 3 weeks ago, if you didn't hear this, we certainly did because it was a really big deal to us, we became part of the JS Foundation. So about a little over 3 weeks ago, woo, yeah, all right. I'm not sure about this, but I think maybe the first app project really that's kind of in the foundation. Well, second app project in the foundation. I'll take it, second, awesome. So we sort of think about CURE as the organization that incubated the innovation that like really started the project back in 2014. And then the JS Foundation is like how we're kind of taking the next step as a project and really growing up. And we're really grateful to be a part of it. Okay, we launched a 1.0 beta back on May 23rd, which really was like the first time we just tagged it basically to say we think this is good enough for people to start using, and we're interested in getting some direct feedback. And since May, we've had about 12,000 downloads of the Electron app, which is not a success metric. We all know that, right? It's just a leading indicator of the fact that there's demand, especially because we have exactly $0 to advertise the solution. So we're really pleased with that. And so since that time frame, we've had some early deployment and reviews in countries like Kenya and Uganda, that there are multiple deployments there that are starting to go on. A lot of interest in West Africa, and we've been working to partner with the government of Luxembourg, who's like got a satellite service that they deliver to French-speaking countries, and so those are all sort of like conversations that are going on. There's a lot of interest from all sorts of different portions of India. There's a photo I'm going to just show like from something in Greece, and then I had some great conversations this week with some groups in Latin America. Just to give you a like real-world example. Thanks, Chris, for this photo. This is an example of, this was a clinic that was run by a group called Team Rubicon, that if you want to look them up, they're pretty awesome. It's basically, they do disaster relief work with former military and first responders that kind of started out of the Haiti earthquake thing, and they were doing a health clinic in Greece for Syrian refugees, and we're using HospitalRun, and actually after we put out the announcement, wrote Chris to let him know that like, hey, thanks for the fact that you guys are doing this. So that's kind of the impact. And I'd say, like, the real sweet spot for the app is actually that type of like health clinic setting where it's possible to like get up and running in something like extremely quickly. Okay, so why does the project exist? So if you track at all with open source technology, and particularly related to healthcare, you might know it's not the only open source health record platform that's ever been created. So why in the world would we start another project? So I want to tell a little bit of a story, and that story starts in 2011 in a town outside of Nairobi called Kajabi. That happens to be incredibly picturesque. It's like on the edge of the Great Rift Valley, looks over this incredible scene. There's this huge mission station out there, and one of the hospitals for the organization that I used to work for was there, the Cure Hospital. And so this hospital, it's got about 80 employees, sees several thousand patients every year, mostly kids with surgically correctable disabilities. They literally take kids that are crippled and make them people who can walk. So it's really inspiring work. I was out there actually to analyze another technology project that we had just launched inside Cure, and I went on this thing that we call a mobile clinic, right? So we were actually driving out 6 hours away from the hospital to go basically hang out in a church basement for a day. We were gonna see 500 patients and like identify 30 to 40 of them that we actually could do something for, do long-term follow-up on a bunch of them. And that's when I saw, this was our medical record system at the time. This was not a surprise at all. Like I knew we had a paper record system and like long-term we were gonna have to figure out some way to address that. But like that really wasn't what I was there for. Well, the big key piece of learning from that was when we were getting ready to go. So we're loading up on this ambulance these giant cases that I just saw, like showed in the previous slide, of these records. And the thing that's really crazy about that is not just the fact that like we're guessing about how many records we think we're gonna need. Hopefully we've got that right because we picked the region, but like those are physicians that are spending their time like loading these boxes in different places, right? Okay, so like we've got a problem there, and it turns out that just implementing an EMR isn't gonna solve that problem because we're trying to take this information outside of the hospital. So that actually brought an awful lot of clarity to some ideas about like, why would we take on a project like this? And so we recognized we were really trying to build a solution that was focused on the developing world. So we needed to really embrace low resource requirements. If I might have a criticism of, like I think there's awesome work that's gone on in an awful lot of health projects. I think often because the scope is really broad, you're trying to solve the problems for everyone in the world. Maybe sometimes you don't solve it for the people who like have the greatest need. And so like focusing in on low resource requirement areas was one of the real focuses. We knew ease of use was going to be important. We knew that we needed to get really smart about this concept that was just kind of starting to grow up in like 2009, 10, 11, that we got a chance to really make some significant contributions to, called offline first. And we knew we wanted to optimize for time. But in order to execute a project like that, so there's a long history on like, we looked at a bunch of projects, thought about trying to like infiltrate some of them to like implement some of these changes, and finally, incredibly reluctantly, decided to start our own project. And when I tell you we did not want to do this, I mean we really did not want to do this, right? But like we finally decided to go forward with it. Okay, so we also went out and decided like, okay, we've got this problem inside the Cure Hospital. How many other places out there are there like that would actually be served by something like this? So you would think that there's data out there that explains this. You would be wrong if you thought that was the case. Or you know something that I don't know, because we spent a lot of time looking for this and have eventually actually built our own data set out of WHO and UN data and came up with this number that said there's like 13,555 primary care facilities in low to medium income countries. And then, so we had that data, published it, and like published a paper on the topic. And then I went and talked to someone else who works for another NGO, and he said, you're way off, I think there's 13,000 in Nigeria or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's right, maybe it's wrong. But we had at least some sense that there was a lot of need. In order to actually execute a project like this, look, we had another issue, which is like, we've got to go ahead and build something that people are going to want to contribute to. So like if you go look at data like GitHub publishes on the most popular open source projects, you'll find something that a lot of these projects have in common, which is that they all are tools that help developers do their jobs, right? And so we're not building one of those things. So how in the world are we going to create something that people would want to get involved in? So recognize like we've got a big challenge there because we're doing something that is kind of like antithetical to the way a lot of people end up contributing to open source for very good reasons, right? I mean, you want to understand what the business problem is, and you've got to solve a particular problem, and you end up finding yourself into one of these projects. Okay, so we really took the tactic that we needed to be contributor-centric in the way we operated, and we need to actually optimize to really take advantage of those circumstances where people decide that they're going to contribute their time because they're making this huge investment in this problem. So obviously, it really mattered that we were a free open source solution. We want to make it really clear nobody's making any money off this. We've had a focus kind of since we started the project of thinking about, for a developer, what if someone just had a day to do something to help the project? Could they actually get up and running and do something meaningful in a day? We wanted to make sure we utilized some modern tools so that we actually fed back into the people that are contributing so they have some way of demonstrating their skills. The thing I say all the time is so we picked Ember as a platform actually because it's really opinionated. I don't think it's good for every single problem. I think it's really great for the problem that we're working on because we didn't want to have someone coming into the project 3 years in and they have to kind of get out their secret decoder ring and figure out all the ways that HospitalRun does stuff. HospitalRun's an Ember app. So if you don't know Ember, you could learn Ember by working on HospitalRun, or you could go produce some other garbage to-do list that you're going to throw away, right? So you could contribute to us and then demonstrate the fact that you've got that skill, or if you have that skill already, you should be able to walk right into the project and do something right away. We knew we wanted to invest in communal experiences, and so we've done things like hack days and even these retreats. And then we really wanted to focus on the fact that we wanted the community to be international. And the contributor base absolutely reflects that. There are people from all over the world that are involved in the project, and that's good because it's a worldwide problem. Okay, so at the end of the day, we ended up with kind of these two primary constituents. If you know anything about nonprofit work, actually, this is pretty common. You've got this constant balance between the people that fund the work and the people that you're doing the work for. And the reality is, both those people are incredibly important in order to make something like this happen, right? We can all say, it's all just about the healthcare workers. And I would agree, yes, it is, except without the people that do the work, none of that work's going to get done. They're the money that fuels the whole thing, right? So we kind of try to hold both those things in balance in the project. So that led us to a number of guiding principles about the way the project operates. And these are the things that we kind of we make. These are the lenses through every decision that we make. And maybe this is instructional as you think about if you've ever thought about starting a project like this. So first, we're highly focused on serving the developing world. So when people look at the software, so I'll say this because I didn't implement the interface. So I get to say, it looks awesome, right? And I'm not bragging on me because I didn't do it, right? But people look at it and they just assume it must be a commercial product that someone has to pay for, which also gets complicated in the Slack channels when people are demanding immediate service, and you have to remind them that you're volunteering to do this work. But we really wanted to focus in to say we're doing this work for people in the world who don't have someone to do this work for them. And frankly, we're really hopeful that micro enterprise builds up around the project. It's actually sort of starting to happen already where people are doing deployments of the system. But that's the focus of the project. We didn't build it to compete in a Western healthcare context. It's offline enabled. So we really wanted to make a major contribution to the offline first community by executing this. So we've got great relationships with the folks that are a part of Offline First. If you've never tracked it, I would encourage you to go check out the community. They run these camps that are really awesome where we kind of deal with issues of what does it mean to operate in moderately connected environments. And I think it's a problem that exists kind of across our industry. It just happens to be more pronounced in a setting where connectivity is, a nice way to say it, unreliable. Intuitive. So we really wanted to focus in on great user experiences for clinicians, for administrators, and even for contributors. So how do we optimize for people's time and create things that really help them get their work done? So one of my favorite features is the fact that you can create these hashtags that will auto-fill a big piece of content that you want to put in any notes field in the system. And then a big guiding principle is save time. So the only resource that we have that we can't make more of is people's time. Let's do the absolute best we can to make sure everything we do is focused on that. Okay, so as I say all that, it's a really fantastic project, and I want to make it incredibly clear that we have no idea what we're doing, right? So we didn't know how to run an open source project when we started this project. I barely think we know how to do it now, right? However, I think we've experienced a decent amount of success so far, and so I wanted to take a second just to offer up just a few learnings. If you've ever thought about starting a project like this, if you're thinking about getting involved in a project, you kind of want to analyze through particular lenses, how successful something can be. We've had a lot of people that have come to us lately who are thinking about doing similar things, so I've had these types of conversations. So here's 7 things that I think we've learned, things that have worked or not worked that might be useful to you. Okay, so number 1, having a product designer on the founding team super mattered. So this might seem obvious if you're building a commercial product and it doesn't look and feel fantastic. It's probably not going to be successful. So there are obviously projects, maybe some of us in this room are engaged in projects where the interface doesn't matter. For app projects, it absolutely does, of course. And frankly, the fact that we had a really killer designer working on the core team mattered, because people took us seriously way earlier than they should have because it looked awesome, right? And so he's a great product designer. He now worked with me at Cure International. Now he's on the product design team at Github. Fantastic guy. Jay Glovier, go look him up. Okay, for this project, Ember has been a fantastic choice. Again, I think I said just a little bit earlier, we really wanted to stay focused on the fact that contributors, we wanted to make sure people felt welcome to contribute and felt welcome to learn while they're in the process of contributing to the project. And so for us, picking a highly opinionated framework was incredibly valuable and was absolutely the right choice for us. And I would say that's one of those things where there are lots of projects you get engaged with where if you look at the set of people you're going to need, maybe it is only several dozen. In our case, we realized 100 contributors is a great start. We probably really like to get to the place where we're at 500, right? And so we've got to have an environment that's welcoming for people to get involved. And that's about the way we interact with people, but it's also about what the threshold is to start working in the project. We spent a lot of time really aligning with other open source communities. So the offline first community, I think, has been a tremendous benefit to the project, and I'd like to believe that we have been too to them, because we're really kind of real world demonstrating the value of these techniques. Ember's been fantastic to the project. Again, I think we've been a great showcase of not just a commercial solution, but what people can do in a charitable setting, and they've been really generous to us in the way that they've treated us. The Electron community has been really fantastic to us too, for the exact same reasons. So I think really working to try to find alignment with other projects and figure out not just we like each other, but are there ways that we can be mutually beneficial to each other is super valuable. Telling our story and leaning on partnership opportunities. So in the same way that we've worked with a bunch of open source projects, we've really leaned into the opportunities to work with commercial partners who, frankly, leveraging the story of what we're doing is good marketing for them. And so, and we're totally fine with that. Our story, right? We're not victimizing someone who's being served by this. We're saying we're doing this work and these types of people are helping us. So New Relic's been really fantastic to us. GitHub's been really fantastic to us. And we've had some great contact with folks at Microsoft. So there are other partners who, anytime we get an opportunity, we've found a way to kind of make it work for both of us so that ultimately we can achieve our goal. The other thing is we really focused in on making the mission central. So we've said all along we started this project because this is a problem that needs solved. And if HospitalRun's the thing that solves that problem eventually, that would be fantastic. If we're prior work to something that actually really solves this problem in the future, that's fantastic too. The primary goal for us is to make sure the problem gets solved. So for us, that's the mission, and all the decisions we make go through that lens. We've had a really strong focus on our primary constituents, right? So all the decisions we make in the project, the way we get stuff done, we're really trying to balance those two things together, right? And focusing in on we're not trying to solve every single healthcare problem, but like we're going to focus in on, like we've had in mind the whole time, what tool could we put in someone's hand that would actually like help a single change agent in a clinic or in a smaller hospital get up and running with something and convince their colleagues that this might be the right solution for them. And then the same thing on the open source contributor side. And then the last thing is just guiding decisions by our objectives. So we've got these 4 or 5 major objectives that we're trying to make decisions through. And so, you know, there are a lot of situations where we run into conversations with people that like, they may have a different vision about where they want to go with like either what they do with open source contribution, or maybe they're in a particular public health sector and they don't like the fact that the solution doesn't solve every single problem that exists in developing world healthcare. And that's fine that that's the case, but like we've really said like we're going to stay focused on the reasons that we started this project to start off with. Seth Godin talks a lot about like when you're building tribes, the idea that like you like recognize the principles of like people like us and like invite more of those people to get involved. And that's been like really key to the way we've operated. And then just, this is a quote, we finally put out like our first like customer survey, right? Just recently after we launched this. And this is just a quote from one of the survey respondents, fell in southern India. It wasn't in Kerala, I can't remember which state it was actually. Keep up the hard work, it actually helps a lot of people. And I'd agree with that. We're just really grateful to be in a position to get a chance to do that in partnering with the JS Foundation. Okay, so here's 3 like really key opportunities inside a project like this. I don't know if this is something you might be interested in getting involved in, where like there's lots of things we could do. Here's 3 things that actually could like really move the ball down the field in a project like this, that actually you might find to be an interesting technical problem to solve. Okay, so the first one is auto provisioning from the Electron app. So when we launched the beta of the system, there was this little oddity of like, why would we ship this thing as an Electron app? Because like, you know, isn't it meant to be a collaborative solution that works with a lot of different people? Yes, but we wanted to put the product in people's hands right away. So actually we've even built a lot of the features so that like when you open the thing up, you could just start working with it, period, right? So it auto logs you in, and then like you don't have to do all the setup data. You can actually go back and change that later on in the configurations when like you get more sophisticated. We wanted to like just let people start using it. But the ideal scenario would be I'm playing around with this solution and then I'm ready to make this a big boy or a big girl solution that's now got a server attached to it, right? And so the idea of like auto provisioning from an Electron app out to a cloud instance and utilizing all the capabilities that exist because we're using Pouch and it can sync to a Couch database. Like there is a huge opportunity there to proliferate solutions like this by utilizing some of those tools. So who wants to work on that? That would be awesome. And we'd love partnerships with any of these organizations and more who are interested in demonstrating how awesome they are by working with a solution like this. The next thing is like all about integration with other devices. So if you know anything about healthcare technology, there are some very old protocols that are used for how devices integrate with one another. And this is kind of one of the newer ones, new in the sense that the spec's like 5 years old, that a lot of things actually technically don't fully implement yet. But we've kind of said like, for our project, the notion of implementing a solution that it was created when I was 6 years old is probably not a good solution. It's called HL7. So the next revision is called Fire. And so we're actually in the process right now. We've got a project out there where we're trying to start to create our own implementation of the Fire API that allows us to interact with other devices. One of the ones we've got a real world example where there's an app called Mina that lets you carry your own personal health record on your phone. And it's like a pay-for service in the US that they want to give away in low income contexts. And so the idea that like you could actually show up somewhere and like scan your record and allow it to be in this other medical record system could be really awesome. So I can implement that with Fire. And then the third thing is like kind of the biggest pain point for us right now. Does anybody know like this map? So this map comes from an organization called Charity Water. If anybody doesn't know about Charity Water, they're awesome. They do water projects all around the world. If you give them money, 100% of your money goes to make sure someone has clean water. They're wonderful humans that work on this. One of the great things they do is they demonstrate like where all the water projects actually are. And so we've got this challenge of like trying to figure out like how do you collect usage statistics in a system like this in a way that is moral, right? So like we want to make sure that like we have like easy ways for us to be able to track things like where's the solution being deployed, and at a high level like how many records are going through the system. And I was talking to Mike at lunch about the idea that like, hey, shouldn't there be like some sort of package out there that like creates the framework to do that sort of thing? And yes, I think there should be, and who knows, maybe somebody's going to raise their hand and say, yes, there is, and you just don't know about it. And if that's the case, come talk to me about it. But we'd love to get to the place where we're deploying with solutions like that. And obviously, if someone gives us permission to collect some amount of information, we're not interested in collecting private, sensitive information, but we want to know like how the app's being used so that we can make it better, which I think is a major challenge in any sort of app project. And with that, I'm just going to say thank you. If you guys, as kind of like a commercial for a project like this, my hope is that if you've thought about working in something like this, maybe some of the stuff that we're doing has been or can be useful to you. And so I'm happy to talk to you about that. If you want to talk more about the project, I invite that conversation. I'm going to be around here the entire rest of the day, and just want to thank you guys for your time, and hope you have a great rest of your day.